Well, hey everybody, what is going on? As promised, I was gonna be finishing out my 2021 list. I had done the best of 2020 list that you guys will probably be watching soon. And now, as someone on the internet once said, I believe his name was Mark Ellis from Collider, you've tried the best, now try the rest. So I will now be talking about the worst films from 2020. Um, now, for clarity, as one should with doing a list, I have not seen every film from 2020, obviously. So there's probably bound to be films that are worse than these 10 that I did not see. But these were the 10 that really left a stinker, or left a scent, if you will. Um, and we'll get into it in a second, but even though I found 2020 to be a great year for women, as I said in the best of 2020, um, I know you're probably thinking I'm going to segue into males. I'm not doing that because males were also pretty good this year as well. Um, but it was actually like if you take away a lot of the films that I had enjoyed from 2020, it was actually in many aspects also a mediocre year because a lot of the films that I had saw were okay. They weren't great. They weren't terrible. These 10 are, I think, fairly bad, but a lot of the other ones that I saw, they weren't too bad. Wish I had my phone with me, but there was I was gonna name off a few films that I found to be okay. Trying to remember, there was like one film that everyone bashed on a lot this year, and I was like, I didn't hate that film, but needless to say, there was a lot of mediocre films as well. And these 10 in particular, though, I really didn't like for various reasons, and I'm gonna get started because I was trying to think of like the other films I was gonna bring up as like mediocre choices, but I don't have any. All I have right now is these 10 stinkers. So let's just get into it. And also tell me guys your list when I'm done with my list. Tell me your favorites, tell me your worst. And of course, the next video will not be my anticipated of 2021. I actually have a review slated, hopefully, to come out on the 10th. So hopefully I'll have that review out by then. If not, it will be my anticipated of 2021, just so you guys can see which videos are coming next. And of course, if any news breaks, um, we will cover it. Um, which, by the way, I know some of you probably like, talk about Michael Keaton's Batman. They just talked about today that whole story was bullshit. I knew it was bullshit as well. Or at least there was a misunderstanding. So yeah, we're not going to cover that. Um, yeah, but let's get into my list and see where you guys also your heads are at with your top 10. So, okay, so number 10 is going to be Project Power. Um, this is the Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's superhero film that came out, I want to say like back in August. It was a Netflix film, and for a hot minute I was like, okay, this could be interesting. At least from what I was hearing from it, there wasn't any trailers at the point when I was hearing about Project Power. I thought the idea sounded interesting. I thought it sounded interesting enough, like a little pill that like gives you superpowers. I thought that was an interesting concept. And it was also a concept that I thought was 50-50 because it, depending on how the execution goes, this is a concept that could very much be leaning towards campiness or can be taken into a much serious route depending on how it's executed. And well, it's sad to say that the execution here was rather disappointing and quite lazy, I have to say. Um, they really went for the Hollywoodized style filmmaking instead of trying to do something unique. They went for the typical action route that I just seen over and over again, and I was quite disappointed with it. I didn't hate it, but I found myself incredibly disappointed. And because I thought that there was a lot of potential with that concept, and I thought that with the cast also, I thought that there could have been an appealing cast, but honestly, none of the cast is appealable to me. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's probably the closest, but the newcomer that they have, I thought was honestly not great. I didn't like her. A lot of people did, but I didn't really like her. Um, and I just did not like the amateur presentation that the film chooses to go for. I really wish they went for a more grounded approach, and maybe get some fresh names, not Jamie Foxx or Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I know they want to, sell the movie, but you know, some other fresh names might have elevated the piece also. There's a reason why this was on Blacklist for as long as it was, because even though it's an interesting concept, there's also because even in script there's issues with it, because I just think that in general it's a very Hollywood movie, and I'm just not about that. Um, and I just found it disappointing in terms of its conceptually and how it was executed. Um, and I just found the performances also to be kind of weak in my particular opinion. So that's my number 10, Project Power. Uh, Number 9 is gonna go to Scoob. Yes, the Scooby-Doo movie. So here's the thing about Scoob. Um, Scoob is Scoob is a film that I knew going in was not going to be for me. I knew it was not going to be for me. I knew this was going to be something for children. I knew that this was going to be something that was going to be appealable for children only. So I had to view that from that demographic, and of course as a film in general. And I have to say, after watching it, I found it insultingly dull for children. Like the animation, I would say at some points is rather distracting, and story-wise, it's very basic. Um, like I had just shot my praise with Soul, and the reason why I think I gave so much praise to Soul is because I loved how they were able to package adult themes into these kids films, and kids are able to understand what the movies are talking about through these images. Again, like I think that Pixar is kind of like a modern day Mr. Rogers in some cases, for children. Um, and instead of taking a route like that for the Scoob movie, they try to go for this very, very cliche friendship film, that just feels so familiar, so dull, so um, how do I say it? Just um, just very boring. I mean, I just found myself quite bored with it. I found the voice acting to be a little weird too. Like Mark Wahlberg's a voice, and it just did not fit his character. Um, like I said, I found the animation to be a little weird. I think it's like 3D animation, I think. Um, I just didn't like the animation style. I found it to be a little distracting, and I just found it to be kind of bland. I just found it to be a very bland film, and just very dull. Like again, insultingly dull. I was quite surprised how dull the film was, and I really think children, if you just want to watch something, I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's tolerable, but it's just a throwaway. Like it's really just a throwaway film, and I really have no desire to watch it again, especially for what the price tag was. It was like $30 or something, which was outrageous. If you want the 4K, you could buy 30, you get it for 30. No, forget that. But yeah, you can skip on Scoop. It's just very dull, very boring, and just doesn't hold any heart or charisma or emotion that a Pixar film like Soul did this year. Number 8 is going to go to Songbird. We talked about this very recently, Songbird. Um, I didn't hate this movie as much as a lot of other people did, but it's still not good. Um, this is very poorly directed, because the premise itself, I think, is okay. I think that the environment is interesting enough, and I found the leads to be decent, but beyond that, there is an atrocious supporting cast here. Demi Moore is terrible in the film. I think it's just riddled with cliches, um, and it has the Bay style of filmmaking riddled all over the movie. I mean, it has this, as Mark Kamard phrased it, and I thought it was a perfect analogy. There's like a pornographic and paparazzi type style that Bay films have that just don't work at all. And Dutch angles, Jesus, like so many Dutch angles. And shaky cam to hell. I mean, this thing does not, like if you want to see a film that's all about shaky cam, Songbird's one of those movies because it's all about shaky cam. It's all about those just ridiculous close-up angles and shit. Um, so I found it technically to be just atrocious. I found the supporting cast to be quite bad. I found the direction to be very amateur, and I think I didn't find it to be insulting, like the controversy that's spurred from the film. I didn't find it to be insulting, but I definitely found it to be very poorly made um, on its own merits. And I think the style that it chooses to do is just like I heard this movie like was fast tracked. You can tell that they were like just getting it done. They didn't have like a set time. They didn't have many months to do it. It looks like they took like a month or so to make it, and it really shows in Songbird. Number seven is going to go to a film called The Hunt. Um, The Hunt is a weird film for me because The Hunt is a film that can never know that never knows what it wants to be. Um, it wants to be political at one point. It wants to be strategical. It wants to be action packed. It wants to be flat out funny. Like it wants to be everything, but it ends up being nothing but noise and like no pizzazz, nothing. Like it just feels really odd. Like I was watching it the entire time and I was trying to navigate what the film's purpose was, and I just couldn't find it because the film kept switching on itself. It kept trying to figure out what it really wanted to be. Like it wanted to be this political satire, then it wanted to be this action-packed thriller, then it wanted to be a comedy. It was like it didn't know which one it wanted to be. And I I was really disappointed with that. And I just found it to just be like I think that that's undertones, it's political undertones. I don't know if I really agree with them. Like some like how do I say this? Because I don't want to like I'm not trying to get political, but it's like I don't quite understand the politics of the film. I'll just put it that way. It just I understand some of it, but I also don't. And not saying like I disagree with the politics. Like no, I literally don't know the politics of the film. Like they're making like references to certain things and like the political spectrum, and I don't even know what it is that they're referencing. So it's very inside baseball. Like if you're very much into politics, you'll probably love The Hunt. But if you're not, if you're someone like me who only knows a handful of things about in the world of politics and their own world, you're probably going to feel a little lost with a lot of the quote unquote funny moments. And even those quote unquote funny moments are quite divisive. There's no, um, like, I don't feel like there's really any pleasing anybody with this movie. I wasn't pleased, and I don't think a lot of other people will be pleased from it. And according to a lot of reactions, a lot of people weren't. So it's a film that just never knows how, how to make up its mind, and I just think that it tries to be a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it ends up being just a bunch of noise and really amounts to nothing at the very end. So, number six. Number six kind of something that pains me to say it because I actually kind of was hoping this film was going to work out, but it turns out it was just nothing but I wouldn't say garbage, but pretty bad, pretty bad for what it was, and that was the New Mutants. Um, this is as cliche as horrors get. I mean, it's laughable how basic this is. Um, the cast for starters holds no charisma or life besides the lesbian couple that they have in the film. They actually did fairly well together. Um, but beyond that, like character motivations are almost like non-existent. Like I'm gonna spoil a moment in the film. I don't think anybody really cares, but there's literally like our main character, the one that we follow throughout the film, this female. There's at one point where she like tries to commit suicide for no real good reason. Like she just gets up on a church and then she's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna off myself. And I'm just like, why? Just because someone said something about you or you're not being accepted? It's like it just came out of like nowhere, and I was like, why? Like what's the point of the scene? And then other scenes started playing the same tune. Like I was like, why is this happening? Why is that? Why? Like just why? Um, because the issue that a lot of people thought the film was going to have wasn't the rating. It wasn't the rating, guys. Like it wasn't the rating. It wasn't just the amount of delays. It's just the story. Because let's remember, guys, this is the film that Josh Boone fought to keep. This was the cut that he wanted. This is the cut that was test screened, and a lot of people did not like it. That it was test screenings, mind you. Um, and the company was telling Josh Boone for I say what like a year to reshoot the film to make it scarier, to make it more appealing, he should have listened because it's just not good. It's just not good. I mean, you can tell when all the jump scares are coming, you know exactly how this film's going to play out. The only interesting part about it is the demon bear. That's the only thing that's interesting about it. The visual idea of the demon bear. That's really, really it. Anna Taylor-Joy gets really annoying at one point. Like I get her motive. I get what she's trying to do, but it just translates as being annoying. I just could not stand her character. Like, and in some cases her, because a lot of the choices that she makes, it's just like she's looking to piss off everybody in the crew. Like, and I get why she does it because she's like hiding herself. I get it, but it's like no, you're kind of an asshole. Like you know what I mean? Because again, I just don't have much care for these characters. I really don't. I really don't have much care for them, and the story doesn't care for them either. So at the end, you're just watching something that is disposable in every sense of the word, and is just laughable to watch at some points, like really laughable, because it's amazing to me how cliche this is, because I was expecting something a lot more creative, and it's really not. I mean, an R rating I don't know would have helped this, but perhaps it would have. I don't know. Or is it R? I don't know. I think it was PG-13. I think it was. Either way, though, it wasn't going to be the rating or more delays that were going to save this thing. What was going to save it was doing some reshoots. And well, Josh Boone didn't choose to do that. He decided to keep the story that he wanted, and I commend him for it. But at the end of the day, Josh Boone, the story that he decided to keep, well, it's not that good. So, all right, now let's get into my top 5. These are the top 5. These are the films that I found I was just did not like these at all for various reasons, and we're starting with number 5. And my number 5 is going to go to The Witches. The Witches, directed by Robert Zemeckis. It was released on HBO Max, stars Anne Hathaway. This is just bland. I mean, this is just bland. It's indescribably hollow. It's so wooden and lifeless that the things it gets right start to show their bad side sooner than later. Like, that's how wooden this thing is and how bland it is. Because when it gets its stuff right, like eventually, like you just start seeing other sides present themselves, and it's just unbearable. Anne Hathaway is okay. She's the one fair thing about the film, but beyond that, it's again kind of like how I said to Scoob. I'm quite surprised how bland and boring this is, and how lifeless it is, because that's really the phrase for it. It's quite a lifeless film. And for all the negative press it got from the disability community, because for those who don't know, there was a big controversy that went about with The Witches. I would argue that its true offense is how they treat fat humor, because a lot of the times they kind of the whole time, like, that there's like this weird like cliche, like, oh, he's the fat one, that type of thing. At some point the fat person is supposed to redeem themselves. It's supposed to show like, hey, they actually do matter to the story. They don't do that. Every single time that the fat guy shows up, they always put this dude down. They always make him stupid. They always make him do this and that. Why? Because he wants to eat. It's like, I found that more offensive than the disability thing, in my particular opinion. And also, Zemeckis, just because you made the greatest film of all time, Forrest Gump, that's just my personal opinion, it does not mean you get to use some of it here. I mean, there's a shot in The Witches. I won't spoil how it is. I mean, actually, I will spoil it. Fuck it. There's a scene where they've entered the hotel, where the witches are and all that stuff. The gate, the treeway to it is the same treeway to Forrest Gump's mother's house. Like, it's literally the same area, the same path. And I sat there and I was like, no, Zemeckis, no. You do not get to do that. No. You don't get to do that at all. You don't try to redeem your piece by trying to throw in references to the greatest film of all time. You don't get to do that. But yeah, I found it very hollow. I found it very boring. I found it cringy at some points too, like with the rats characters and stuff. And by far and away the worst child performance of the year. Like I was just, or actually, well, yeah, probably. I was thinking about my list, but I was like, yeah, probably, yeah. This little kid that we follow at for a certain point of the film, yeah, he's so bland. He is so bland. Like every time you see him on screen, this is the type of face that he kind of gives you. Like it's like get some life in there, bro. Like put some passion, something. And all that also boils from Zemeckis because a lot of this film just kind of feels like it's like Zemeckis kind of went, sure, I'll do the witches, sure. Like it's like that's ultimately how it felt like. It's like, okay, sure. It didn't feel like they'd put much effort into it. Anne Hathaway's the only one who's really trying. Um, but other than that, it's hollow, it's wooden, and importantly, lifeless, man. It's wow. Like, I'm very surprised how lifeless the film is. It really, really is. Um, so yeah, that's The Witches. Number four, though, I would say is more insulting than The Witches um, in certain aspects, and that is the film Capone. Capone is the Al Capone biopic, quote unquote biopic, starring Tom Hardy and directed by Josh Trank. Um, wow. Um, yeah. As much as I had hoped that this would be Josh Trank's comeback, it really isn't. It really, really, really isn't. There are a lot of issues with it. Firstly, I mean, it is needlessly complicated. They try to do this ambiguous story with Capone, like showing you how his mind is going crazy with his with all this and that, and with amnesia, with his suffering of amnesia and all that stuff. And I just found it so tirelessly complicated to the point where I'm just like, I give up. I give up. Like it's just, it's not the type of narrative that this film needed. Um, the editing, mind you, which Josh Trank did, is so choppy. Like it is so fucking choppy. Like each scene feels incomplete. Like you feel like that there's more that needs to happen in the scenes. Instead, they just cut at the wrong times, and that affects the pace at certain elements. And also with Josh Trank as the director, this direction that he chooses is not at all a benefit to the story. It does not work because it leads to some um, very messy choices. In particular in its depictions of mental illness, because I would say this about it. I think that its choices it makes in how it depicts amnesia and mental illness in general, I felt very uncomfortable because the depictions were oddly comical and it all came in poor taste for me. Like it didn't seem like strategical or I don't know what the word would be for this type of comedy, but this is something you don't really make fun of. I mean, comedy is subjective. You're allowed to make fun of anything. I mean, but there is a thin line between humor and then insults. Um, and this just felt insulting in some respects to mental illness. It just does not respect it. It like he shits his pants at one point, and it just you feel like laughing, but it's like you feel so bad laughing. You know what I mean? Like it's like no, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but the film is telling me to laugh. Um, I yeah, and also just as a small thing, seeing how Josh Trank was taking this criticism, I I gotta be honest, man. I mean, I know that Fantastic Four was mainly a lot of Fox's problem. They went and hijacked that film a lot, but a lot of it also has to do with Josh Trank as well. A lot about how he dealt with it, and a lot about how um, a lot of his direction as well. Because this is all him. This is all him. He directed it. He produced it. I believe he wrote it, and he edited the film. So this is all him. This is all Josh Trank. All Josh Trank to blame, and all Josh Trank all Josh Trank to blame fully because this is a poorly made film, and again, this the type of narrative that it chooses just does not benefit the film at all. This needed a complete overhaul and needed a completely different tone and style because the one it chooses does not work in the slightest and is rather insulting to mental illness in many ways. So yeah, that's Capone. However, though, even though Capone was the most insulting film that I saw this year, the next film that I saw gave me the most response, gave me the biggest reactions that I've had from a film this year. And that was a film called Hillbilly Elegy. This is one of the better examples of recent memory of a complete and utter misguide, because it's incredible how talented Amy Adams and Glenn Close are by elevating garbage writing, just garbage writing, because the one strength to the film is Amy Adams and Glenn Close. I mean, they're actually quite good in the film. Like, I actually think Amy Adams is one of my favorite supporting actresses of the year. Honestly, she is that good in the film. She actually makes up for a lot of the terrible choices that the film makes, because this is a horribly misguided story, that never, ever at any point presents a likable group of characters. It holds an extremely wooden lead because you think that it's probably Amy Adams or Glenn Close that are the lead. No, it's this kid named Gabriel Basso. He is the worst male performance that I saw all year. Okay, hands down. There's no male performance this year that I saw was as bad as that. It was just dull, absolutely dull. Again, kind of similar to that kid in The Witches. He kind of stares at you like this a lot and, tries to emote, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, where's the direction? Like, Ron Howard, where were you? And above all else, that without a doubt, this is the worst script I saw this year. I mean, it's borderline insulting how poorly written this is. I mean, I was just blown away by how poorly written it was. Like, I was like listening to Amy Adams and Glenn Close, and I was like, they're great. The writing that they have is shit. I mean, it's bad writing. Ron Howard's direction is okay enough. I don't like the structure of the film either. I think that this flashback bullshit that they do sometimes for dramas, it works in some regards. Here, it completely doesn't work. But the writing is just you. I dare you to find a worse script. I mean, there probably is, but in terms of the worst script I've seen in 2020, Hillbilly Elegy takes the cake. It just blew me away how bad the script was. Absolutely terrible script, with a terrible lead performance and just an overall misguided story that just never ever is appealable in any sense of the word. So that's Hillbilly Elegy. All right, here we go. Number 2 and number 1. What are they? Well, one of them did very little for me. Yeah, I know, that was a terrible joke. Number 2, as obviously, Dolittle. Dolittle. As I said in my review for Dolittle, the film kind of describes itself in one particular point. I'm just going to bring up that quote again, which is this. That quote being, "I've been given a front row seat to Crazy Town." And that's pretty much my thoughts on the film, because, man, this is a cheap film. It's cheap. It's weird for me to say that because the film cost like $200 million to make. It did little at the box office. I think it was one of the bigger bombs of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. It is incredibly awkward. It holds some of the worst storytelling I've seen in 2020. Robert Downey Jr. is weird. I mean, I don't want to say he's bad in the film, but he is definitely an oddball. I mean, not oddball in the sense that it's appealing or attainable. Like, it's just wacky, odd choices. The accent is like, where the fuck did that come from? And the worst thing about Dolittle is that logic is completely non-existent. There is no logic to why he can hear these animals. There's no logic to how he could speak to them. Apparently, anybody can talk to these animals in any form or fashion, and somehow they can understand each other. Like, I can do this, and the gorilla can understand something. Like they can get something out of it somehow. Or actually, what I'm trying to say is that if I say do this, and if I'm trying to say like, hey, fuck you, they will understand what I'm saying from just doing this. It's like, where's the logic? Like, none? Okay. And it's crazy. It's just crazy. It's crazy. It's so cheap. and I'm really glad it did well at the box office because I really don't want to see a sequel to this. I really, really don't. And um, it is just bad. I really don't have any other words to describe it. It's just bad. Not as bad though as my number one pick. This film got me angry. Like there was all these other films. I was like, there's at least a quality or so that I can like about it. This one has no redeeming qualities at all. This is a film that got me so angry that I had to take a few minutes after the film to gather myself. And that film was called The Last Thing He Wanted, directed by Derez, um, stars Anne Hathaway, Ben Affleck, Willem Dafoe, big cast of people. And the title of the film pretty much sums up my thoughts on the movie. Just change he to we. And that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the film. Because I can't tell you what the movie is about. I mean, like, not like, oh, like, metaphorically or whatever. Like, I literally cannot tell you what the story is about. Because even if I could, there's still no emotion, no development, no tension, and it's a film with moving scenes that add up to nothing. Like, literally add up to nothing. Like, there's something that it feels like it's building itself up to something, and then once it presents what it is, it's like, that's what is that? That doesn't add anything to the story. That's stuff that we already know. And the biggest problems with the film is the cast is just terrible. They're terrible. Anne Hathaway probably brings the worst performance I've seen out of her, and probably in general this year, and as well as Willem Dafoe. I cannot believe it. There's a scene between Anne Hathaway and Willem Dafoe that is in my mind that's been in my mind since 2020. It's like a conversation scene between the two in a bar, and it's terrible. Like, it's terribly directed and terribly acted, terribly written. Like, it was blowing my mind how bad it was. And the biggest flaw of it all is Deriz. This is the worst direction that I saw from 2020. Nothing beat it. This was so badly directed, and it just I started to just like it turned into a comedy. Like, I was really like, it went from this gripping piece that for like the first few seconds to this extremely wooden Anne Hathaway to this borderline like laughable Willem Dafoe, and a plot that just has no sense of direction or fun or care. It's nothing. Like, it's a film about nothing. You come out of it feeling nothing, you care about nothing, and you shouldn't care about nothing, because it is definitely the worst film of 2020, by far, in a way, period. So yeah, those are the worst of 2020. Again, I've not seen every film in 2020, so there's bound to be movies that are probably worse than these 10. But yeah, those are my 10. Again, just to reiterate, number 10 was Project Power. Number 9 was Scoob. Number 8 was Songbird. Number 7 was The Hunt. Number 6 was The New Mutants. Number 5 was The Witches. Number 4 was Capone. Number 3 was Hillbilly Elegy. Number 2 was Dolittle. And number 1 was The Last Thing We Wanted. Or, I'm sorry, The Last Thing He Wanted. So, yeah, there were some stinkers in 2020, as every year has a few stinkers. But again, 2020 was still a very good year, I must say, even though there were some pretty bad films that came out as well. So avoid these movies. Don't watch them. But actually, I would say watch Hillbilly Elegy if you really want to see some bad writing. That's if you want to see some bad writing. But other than that, though, avoid these movies. You don't need to watch them. If you want to be inspired to see what to not do, watch these movies. But other than that, yeah, pass on them. And let me know your worst of 2020 and your best of 2020. I would love to hear your guys' list and see how we compare and contrast. And maybe there's some movies that you guys can tell me that I've never heard of before, and I could see them and see how bad they are, or if they would be considered a top 10 film for me. But yep, these are my top 10 worst, and I've done my top 10 best. I will then be doing my top 10 anticipated, or at least my anticipated for 2021. And until then, I guess I'll catch you guys in at that video. It'll probably be a movie review, as I said. Hopefully, I'll have a movie review before that 2021 list. If you don't see a movie review by Sunday, then you'll have a 2021 anticipated list. I promise. If not, sorry in advance. So, but that's it for this video, and I guess I'll catch you guys next time. Remember, be safe, social distancing, wash your hands, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a good night. Peace.